Okay, let's dive into this viral video from Australia that's sparking a pretty intense debate online. It's all about politics, religion, multiculturalism, you name it. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the, let's call it, provocative perspective that this video presents, slide by slide, so we can really get a handle on the argument it's trying to make.
So the video we're looking at today, it wastes absolutely no time. It kicks things off with this really provocative statement right here, and it immediately frames its entire argument around what it calls a huge political miscalculation by Western leaders.
Now, when it comes to describing these leaders it sees as, being manipulated, the source uses a very specific and, frankly, historically loaded term. It's not just saying, hey, they're making a mistake. No, the argument is much deeper, that they're playing a part in something they don't even understand.
And really, this definition is absolutely key to understanding the video's entire perspective. I mean, the whole argument is built on this idea that these political moves aren't just failing, they're actually helping a cause that the leaders themselves just don't get. They don't see the full picture.
Okay, so what's the evidence for such a big claim? Well, the video grounds its entire argument in one very specific, very viral incident that happened at the Lakemba Mosque in Sydney.
So the way the video tells it, the Australian Prime Minister shows up at the Lakemba Mosque, and he's met with just outright hostility. The video claims that even after 2 years of what it calls pro-Islamist policies, like recognizing Palestine, he was still totally rejected by the people there.
And this event, it becomes the foundation for the video's first big argument. See, it's not just presented as a bad day for the PM. No, the video frames this as definitive proof that a whole political strategy is, well, destined to fail from the get-go.
And here we get to the absolute core of the video's argument. It's saying the conflict isn't really political, it's existential. The video's point is that no amount of policy changes or trying to appease people is ever going to work because, from this perspective, the issue isn't what you do, it's about who you are.
And that's the logic right there. The argument being made is that, from this particular viewpoint, any leader who isn't an Islamist is automatically, by definition, the problem. And if that's the case, well, then trying to appease them is totally pointless. It frames the divide as something that just can't be bridged. So, starting with that one incident at the mosque, the video then kind of zooms out to look at the bigger picture. The claim is that this wasn't just some one-off event. Instead, it's part of a much larger and, according to the source, a more worrying pattern that's happening all across the country.
So, to back up what is a pretty dramatic claim, the video moves away from abstract ideas and points to what it presents as real, tangible examples from everyday life.
It highlights two main examples. First, a protest where it says thousands and thousands of Islamists surrounded Melbourne Cathedral. And second, this incident on an airplane where a man is praying and blocking the aisle, asking other people, "Are you a slave of Allah?" Now, the key here is that the source doesn't present these as just random occurrences. They're framed as literal, serious problems that are symptoms of a much bigger issue. All right, so if those are the problems the video is highlighting, the next logical question is, what's the government's response? And as you can probably guess, the video is, well, deeply critical of how the situation is being handled, and it uses some pretty strong language to make its point. And this quote, which comes from a politician the video presents in a very positive light, really gets to the heart of the critique. The core argument is that the government is intentionally dodging what the video calls the real issue. It's focusing on symptoms, things like gun control, instead of what the source sees as the actual root cause.
So the video sets up this really stark contrast, right? On one side, you've got what it calls the gutless government, the one that diverts attention and fails to protect people. And on the other side, you have the courageous alternative it's pushing for, an approach that confronts what it explicitly labels radical Islam head-on.
And this is really presented as the ultimate betrayal. The argument goes that instead of actually dealing with this perceived threat, the government's solution is to punish its longtime citizens, to take away their rights, all to avoid offending newcomers. That's the core accusation here.
So where does all this lead? Well, the video takes all these different threads, the incident at the mosque, the examples of a supposed takeover, the critique of the government, and it weaves them all together to make one final, very stark point about the nature of multiculturalism itself.
And this is where the video really draws a line in the sand. It basically says multiculturalism comes with a condition. For it to work, it argues, every single group has to actually want to integrate their cultures. If even one group doesn't share that goal, then according to this video, the whole model just falls apart.
Which brings us to the video's powerful final statement. It concludes that if a group's end goal isn't to integrate, but to dominate, well then what you have isn't multiculturalism. The whole situation gets reframed, moving from a social issue to one of conflict, using that very, very charged word, invasion.
And so the video ultimately leaves its audience with this one big question. It's really forcing a rethink of how different cultures can and should coexist in one country. Based on the evidence it's presented, it asks you, the viewer, to decide where's the line between cultural integration and a societal takeover. It's a pretty provocative end to a very pointed argument.